Good to meet everyone. Thanks for joining this event. We have an amazing speaker today, Nadia, Yakoob. Don't be confused with a Russian name because I was when I first time met her at Stanford. She doesn't speak, probably, I think you don't speak Russian, right?
No, I wish. I love the writers.
Yeah, she's a great person and has a lot of expertise in immigration law and a highly qualified lawyer helping people from around the world to legally being present in the United States. So Nadia, I will share quickly some slides if you don't mind. I'll let you use your presentation in a bit, okay?
So we're sharing my slides now?
Yeah, I'm gonna share my slides, just 1 second.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah. So I met Nadia Yakoob a couple of years ago, already quite some years ago, I would say, at Stanford. We were doing some mentorship at Stanford University for amazing startup founders from around the world, and I was proud. I was lucky to meet Nadia to actually and to good to know her and participate in such great things like helping start global startups. And now I see those students being successful in different countries. Like I had students from Iceland, from Sweden, from wherever, from Asia, like amazing people, and it's amazing to see them succeed. It's awesome. Today, I decided to invite Nadia for a specific, very important conversation because many people are starting global companies. And since we are a global community helping entrepreneurs to go global, it's important to do it legally and be legal in every country you want to do your business. And some entrepreneurs want to do business in the United States on US soil. And it's a great country to be in, but it's not easy, and definitely you want to protect yourself beforehand, and you got to know the right people to help you and have the right to make the right steps to not to make mistakes in future and pay a lot of money for your mistakes. And Nadia Yakoob is among the best people I know on this topic. She is a practicing US immigration law for like 20 years already. And she helped many people with employment-based visas, family-based immigration, Elysium, removal relief, and citizenship. And I'm really excited to have you, Nadia, with us. It's a great advantage for everyone. I know that you are super busy and it's hard for you to find the room for people because just so many people contact you. But we really appreciate that you joined us. A few words about our community. First of all, our mission is to unite English-speaking entrepreneurs from around the world to connect globally, to make them closer to global capital, customers, and like-minded people. I truly want to help entrepreneurs from remote locations where there is very little opportunity to do business and connect them to our global network. And so basically they shouldn't have any limits to go global. And your role as participants is to be active on our community. It's free community, as I already mentioned, but we expect from you that you help each other. One entrepreneur, for example, learned how to start a company in the United States, and the other is planning to do so. So when somebody's asking for help, you are helping him to do this step. And this is how the community works. This is what I learned in Silicon Valley, where people are helping each other without asking something in return. And this is what we do in our community. This is a like very strong, powerful network of professional people knowing how to do business. This is our team distributed globally. So it's amazing what's happening, considering that we are just 4 months old community. We have team all over the world already, and you already can benefit this because each of those persons, they develop their local community within our global community. And every entrepreneur can network and ask for help to enter other markets to expand their business. This is what we are doing right now, and we already have many successful cases. Our recent speakers, we had many amazing speakers talking here. We had Steve Hoffman, Michael Shanks, Donna Griffith, Ilyas Tribulaev, Bill Reichert, many great speakers like Bob Dorff. And all those people came here not to advertise us as and promote us to make a lot of subscribers or views, but to really help entrepreneurs to benefit from this, the best content from around the world, and so you guys can succeed. We also had an event, live pitch to global investors. We will give opportunity for people to raise money. Our future upcoming speaker, Ben Kaplan, he's going to present next week, and he will talk about pivot, don't pause, how to grow a company during crisis. It's going to be a very interesting, helpful webinar for you. For those who is in Russia, there will be a Russian webinar about legal insights to do negotiations with corporations. It will be also next week. The other speaker is an entrepreneur from Siberia, but he runs a business across the world in 18 countries. And he will talk how to organize business globally. It's very important. It's also be in Russian. But keep in mind, we have very few Russian events. We are a global community. We have only one language. We speak English. This Friday, we will have a global networking events for founders in Russian every last Friday of the month. So join us who speak Russian. And next Friday, next week, the first Friday of the month, we have a global networking event for founders in English, and entrepreneurs from different countries connect and help each other to do business. If you like our events, you want to join our events, this is the link. Just scan this QR code or find us on Eventbrite or YouTube, Go Global World. Our partners, Technopark Skolkovo, Business School Skolkovo, Moscow School of Management Skolkovo, GSD Venture Studio, Rus Base, IB Consulter, Aeronautical University, and many more. To join our community, scan this QR code or find us on Facebook, Go Global World. This is a Facebook page. And on this Facebook page, you can see groups. And to this page, we have about 90 groups of different countries. You can connect to your local country where we have also a community and a leader. And if you want to be a leader of some country, you can reach out to us and we can consider you potentially. And if you need to communicate globally with founders from around the world, you need to join this Go Global World chat. Just find it on Facebook or scan this QR code. The same chat we have on Telegram, Go Global World. So this is a very successful messenger. We're also present on LinkedIn, Go Global World. And this video will be published on our YouTube channel. So remember, we don't have any budget for any marketing. And every like, every repost, every comment helps us to be easier find us on searches, search engines. And this content will have more chances to be visible by people from remote locations with less opportunities. And we want to give opportunities to those people. And on my end, that's it. If you want to contact Go Global World or me, just use this email address and we'll take it from there. On this point, I stop sharing my screen, and Nadia, I'm giving you the stage. Please tell about yourself and feel free to start presentation. And one last point, everyone, please write your questions in Q&A sections. And if you want to ask a question verbally, raise your hand and we will give you opportunity to speak with your voice after Nadia finishes her presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Daniel. This is amazing what you've created. And I remember meeting Daniel 6 years ago. We were mentors at Stanford for a tech entrepreneurship class, and then we've stayed in touch. And it's been great to see all the exciting stuff you've done. So what we're going to be talking about today is, and Daniel, let me know if my screen share, let me put this back.
Sure.
Yeah. So hopefully that's working. Is that working for you guys?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So what we'll be doing today is talking about the different visa options that are available for living and working and really founding or overseeing a company in the United States. Now, I know that it's been a crazy time and we are working against a restrictive landscape. But the good news is that this landscape that is, all these restrictions are temporary. And I'll be talking about all of those as we go through the slides. Let me tell you what we are going to start with, and it's really talking about working as an international student. So this is generally a way that many people launch their lives in the United States, right? They come, they study, they do a master's in engineering, computer science, or they'll do an MBA. And during that time, they'll be building a network and really thinking about the company they want to start or work with or co-found. So I'll talk about working as an international student. And then we'll go over the common temporary employment-based visas. So I'll take you through, H-1B, L, O, J, and we'll even talk about some nationality-specific visas. Daniel has said that this is quite a global audience. So we'll just check in to see if people want to hear about the visas for Canadians or Australians. I have one quick slide on avenues for permanent residence. People often confuse the temporary employment visas with ways to get a green card. And so I'll just break it down. It's one slide. That is actually a whole different and separate presentation. So just a quick summary for you. I'll go over the common obstacles to getting a visa. When I say getting a visa, it's problems at the consulate level, right? When you're at your visa interview, what issues could come up? I'll be closing the presentation with all the recent COVID-19 related travel restrictions. So in addition to just a more immigration restrictive atmosphere right now, we also are dealing with travel restrictions due to COVID. So I'll go over those and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. Okay, so let's talk about studying in the US. Actually, this is how my father arrived in the US and his brothers. They all came over as international students on the F1. And you need to be enrolled in a full-time course of study working towards some kind of degree or even certificate to qualify for work authorization. So, if you're coming for a summer to work on your English or to maybe do a couple of summer school classes at Stanford, which is how, sorry, one second. So if you would like to take summer school classes, which is where Daniel and I met, we would talk to these international students that were at Stanford for the summer. That's not going to give you work authorization. It does give you an opportunity for networking, which is phenomenal, but it's not going to give you that work authorization, which you get when you finish your studies. And that's called OPT, Optional Practical Training. And what it means is that once you're done with your studies, you get 1 year of just unrestricted work authorization. You can work part-time, you can work unpaid, you have to work in the area that you studied. So for example, if you studied computer science, you shouldn't be working at a Starbucks making coffee when you graduate, right? I mean, do people do it? Yes, but you're not supposed to. And they're getting tougher. The schools are getting tougher in checking what are you doing when you graduate, but you get this 1 year of work authorization. Now, for many of you entrepreneurs, you're probably, focusing in some kind of tech product or maybe in a software services. And so for you, you're probably going to study a STEM field. And STEM is short for science, technology, engineering, and math. And if you are studying one of these, in a subject in one of these 4 areas, you actually get an extra 24 months of work authorization. So in total, you would get 3 years of work authorization in the United States. And I see a lot of foreign nationals coming over doing a 1-year master's, which by the way is what my uncle did. He did a 1-year master's of engineering at Berkeley. And then that's how he got his job here at McDonnell Douglas. And then you get 3 years of work authorization. So this is really even good value for your tuition dollars, right? So that's studying on the F1. I do want to bring up really briefly something called curricular practical training. Curricular practical training, which is for working while studying. And that is something that's once you've already studied here and you're doing, let's say, a second degree, which a lot of people do. They'll do a computer science master's and then they'll sign up, they'll register for an MBA. Oftentimes you can start working right away and then study at night and on the weekends. And that's called CPT. But for you guys who are probably coming maybe for the first time to study in the US, these two scenarios are the most common, which is OPT and then STEM OPT, okay? So let's talk a little bit about current restrictions though for new international students. So the first thing I wanna say is that this is all changing day by day. And part of it is the administration. You know, we have a president who is going into an election season. Well, we are in an election season, and his base is quite, you know, they don't like immigration, to be very frank. And so he uses immigration as a way to get his base very supportive of him. So we're dealing with an administration, and then we're dealing with a global pandemic. So it has created 3 challenges. Number 1, the consulates are closed. So even if you are accepted to go to school in the fall, let's say, or you are looking to get into a school for maybe the winter, right now the consulates are all closed for visa processing. Okay, now some have started to accept student visa applications on an emergency basis. So consulates have always been processing emergency visa applications, and now new students who need to get to their schools for the fall are qualifying as an emergency basis. The challenge number 2 is that if your school will be all online, so if the teaching is entirely online in the fall, you're not going to be allowed to come in. This is very unfortunate. The Harvard and MIT sued the government for this policy. The government said, okay, we won't make international students who are in the United States leave the country if it's all online. But for those coming in, they were just saying, well, we'll see, we'll see. That's what they're doing. So that is why I said this is all changing very fast. But right now, if your school will be entirely online, you should probably be ready to get either just no answer on a visa application or a denial for now, a temporary denial. Okay, and then the third challenge is related to COVID-19. And basically, if you're traveling from one of 31 countries, and I'll list those at the end, I'll spell them all out. But you know, it's Brazil, China, Iran, the Schengen states, UK, Ireland. If you're from one of these countries, you're not allowed into the US unless you quarantine somewhere outside of those countries for 14 days. So people were doing this in Canada. They were quarantining in Canada and then crossing over. Now Canada has closed. So if you're traveling from a restricted country, this is going to be difficult. Again, things are changing very fast. The Schengen states have said, okay, we'll start letting students travel to the United States, but essentially it's a bit turbulent right now. And if you are thinking of studying in the US, the fall, it's probably too late right now for you to get it admitted somewhere anyway. But for the winter or for next year, these are just things to be thinking about. Is visa processing and traveling could be challenging. Okay. All right, so now let's move to our temporary employment-based visas. Daniel, that almost looks like you. So, let me move to the very first category, which is the most common visa category for coming and working in the United States, and that is the H-1B visa. And it's called H-1B because it stands for high skilled worker. So that should tell you already something about what this visa requires. I'm going to go over the 4 requirements here briefly, and then I'll drill down into each requirement in a following slide. But the big picture is that there are 4 major requirements. The first is that the position requires a bachelor's degree in a particular field. Okay, and what that means, you know, the most common example is a software engineer, right? The position as a software engineer, it clearly requires a bachelor's degree in like computer science or electrical engineering or electronics engineering. And you, as the intending H-1B worker, have a degree that matches. So a common problem is where someone, you know, let's say the position is marketing analyst, and the person has a degree in English. It's just not going to work because you don't have a degree in business or finance or data analytics, right? You have to have the position has to require a degree, and you have to have it. You know, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I remember 20 years ago, positions like graphic designer, architect, the government believed did not require a bachelor's degree. Now that has changed, but this is an example, right? Like graphic designer, you should have a degree in graphic design. And so that's the degree requirement and the match requirement. The next element, which is important for those of you who want to start a company and then hire yourself, which is very common in the United States. There's payroll reasons to do that. There's tax reasons to do that. There's corporate structure reasons to do that, that you would start a company and then make yourself an employee. And people often ask, well, can I sponsor myself for an H-1B? The short answer is no, because you have to be an employee in a broader sense than just being on company payroll. So one workaround is you have a board of directors who could push you out, or you have a minority share, you know, minority stake in the company. Now that's all great from an immigration perspective, but my advice to foreign nationals is, before you do this, let's look at other alternatives, because why do you want to set yourself up to be pushed out or to have a minority stake, right? I mean, if you are the brains behind this company, don't make yourself vulnerable just to get that H-1B, because there could be other options. And I'll talk about those, okay? The third element, and I'll talk about that more in the next slide, is that you have to actually be paid a salary set by the Department of Labor or above. And then the last is that there are a lot of government filing fees for the H-1B. It's quite a lot of money. And for those of you who are thinking of going to work for a small startup, right? I mean, let's say you in your network know somebody who's founded a small startup in the Bay Area and you want to work for them, you know, budgeting for these kinds of fees and a proper salary, these are factors to keep in mind. So let's talk about the wage requirements. So there's actually 2 ways that the government determines what wage you should be paid, okay? So the first is they actually have a DOL salary website. It's Daniel, I'll share the slides with you, and then the members can click on the links in the slides to take them to these websites.
That would be great. That would be great. Absolutely.
So there's a DOL website. It's literally like a library, and you click down, you press the state, you press the county, it's drop down, you know, what's the occupation you'll work in, and then they'll calculate the salary that you should be paid to be a software engineer in San Francisco, right? So you have to be paid at least that. Or if you're going to work for Apple or Google or for a startup that has 20 other software engineers, just because you're a foreign national doesn't mean you can be paid the bare minimum that the Department of Labor establishes. You have to be paid as much as everyone else there. And this is really important because the government doesn't want that companies hire foreign national workers and pay them less than the US workers, because over time, what it will mean is it just won't hire US workers, right? It'll prefer foreign national workers, and they don't want that. They want you paying whatever you're paying your US workers, same benefits, same salary. And this is, you know, for companies like Facebook, Google, Apple, they pay way above market, right? If you look on the DOL website, a software engineer in San Francisco makes at an entry level $96,000. But at Apple, Google, I mean, they're paying 145 plus stock options, 120. They're paying way above market. So if you were to go work for that company, you should be paid as much as their US workers. So that's really good news. And that's why here in this column, I've said required wage is the higher of the actual or prevailing wage. Okay, so this is going back to the discussion on the startup situation, right? Where you want to create your company. Well, this is not allowed. So you can't be self-employed. You can't actually be an independent contractor to a company. You can't be working for a temp agency. You have to be properly employed by them. And that means you're put on payroll, you're given benefits, you're given vacation. It's okay that you work remotely. You know, a lot of companies like Deloitte, Ernst & Young, McKinsey, they send their employees to client sites or they're off-site. Now, because of COVID, everyone's working from home. This is all okay, so long as there is some form of supervision, some way, you know, performance reviews, there's payroll records. We have to show an employer-employee relationship. Okay, so those are the elements, again, that go into qualifying for the H-1B. And the reason I also bring this up is because a lot of startups, they don't want to put people on payroll. So if you were going to try and work at a startup in the US, they'll say, oh, well, you know, we don't put people on payroll. We just pay them as independent contractors. Unfortunately, that won't work for the H-1B, okay? So as I mentioned, there's a lot of filing fees, and the rule under the regulations is that the employer must pay. What are these fees? I mean, and the reason I just bring this up is because it's a lot of money, right? It's anywhere from $1,710 to $2,460, depending on the size of the company. Because you can see there's a base fee of $460 plus $750 or $1,500, depending on the size of the company. $500 for a fraud prevention fee. This funds their investigations to employer sites. And then if you want a decision quickly, and that's 15 calendar days, as opposed to waiting maybe a few months, employers can pay $1,440 extra. So we're talking a lot in government filing fees, at least to me. This is a lot of money. And then you also have legal fees for a lawyer who prepares the petition, and none of this can be covered by the foreign national, okay? And again, the foreign national, I mean, does this happen? Yes, unfortunately. All the time, employees will say, you know, I really want to work for you, and then the employer finds out they have to pay all these fees, and the foreign national will say, okay, I'll help cover. Does it happen? Yes, it shouldn't, but it does. Okay, so that's the fees. Now let me tell you a big issue with the H-1B. You know, let's say you find that position, it's a match, you're getting the paid right, get an offer letter very nicely showing that you're going to be an employee. Here's the big challenge of the H-1B, is that there is an enormous demand for these visas, and there's just not enough supply. And when I say that, it's under the statute, we have a limit on how many H-1Bs can be given, okay, per year. And the year starts in October. Now, when I first started practicing, I remember in 2000, the annual limit was 195,000. We never had a lottery. We never had this issue where there weren't enough H-1B visas. But then 9/11 happened with the terrorist attacks. And then they reduced the numbers. And then we had the 2008 crash. So the numbers have stayed down. And then we've just are, unfortunately, the politics around immigration have made it so that Congress cannot increase these numbers every year. And you can, I mean, Bill Gates has gone, you know, Mark Zuckerberg, I mean, LinkedIn, Tesla, all these guys, they all have a very active lobby that goes to Congress and says, please raise these numbers. It hasn't worked. So in the meantime, what we're dealing with, what are the numbers? We have essentially about 58,000 for an economy of 300 million, and 20,000 extra visas for those of you who graduate with a US master's degree. So this kind of brings me back to my first slide about international students, which is really the way people start their, which is the most common way people start their lives in the US. You know, they come, they study here, they get that master's, they get that 3 years of OPT, they apply in the lottery every year, and at some point, because they have a US master's, the chances of being selected are good, okay? So the problem is that the four biggest Indian IT consulting firms, they're called Tata, Wipro, Infosys, there's another one, they all file like tens and thousands. I mean, they essentially view this like a lottery, which it is, but they're just putting in petitions for as many people as they can with the hope that they can get what the selection percentage ends up being is about 27 to 40% is the chances of being selected. And they're betting on that. So they're just filing, you know, 10,000 petitions to get maybe 2,500, 3,000 H's for their workforce. How does it actually work? Well, the way it works is that in March, your employer would file. It's an online form. They would just, with your passport, your birth date, whether you have a US degree or not, it's a very simple form. It's a $10 fee. They file. And then the last week of March, the government runs the lottery. So the first 3 weeks is the registration window. The last week of March, they run the lottery based on all the registrations. And then you're getting these electronic notifications if you've been selected. Okay. Now, just know that if you've been selected, it's actually tied, it belongs to the employer, not you. So if, let's say, Facebook sponsored you and you were selected, but then you want to go work for this little startup, you can't take that registration selection to that startup. You are tied to Facebook. Okay, so how much can you work? You actually don't need to work full-time. You could work part-time. You can't work less than 20 hours. You've also got to, you can also hold more than one H-1B. I've had clients do that. They work full-time and then at one place, and then they're working part-time at another place. But it is tied to a sponsoring employer. And so that means you cannot go and work for someone else. Now, with the rise of Uber and Lyft, a lot of H-1B workers were doing that on the side. And they were saying, well, I'm not working for anyone else. I'm just, you know, driving. This is a gray zone. People were doing it. It's expensive to live in the Bay Area. I understand. But technically, you're not supposed to be working for anyone else without authorization. Okay, so that's how much you can work, which I think for some of my clients who work at like Facebook or Google, provided their employment contracts don't have like a conflict of interest, they do work for startups part-time, maybe in the evenings and on the weekends. Okay, so just a couple of things for those of you who may have family, you have spouses, you do have to be married. I know a lot of people in Europe and around the world are in domestic partnerships. They are not legally married, but for US immigration law, you have to be married. And there's one very, very narrow exception, but otherwise you do have to be married. And then your spouse and children under 21 can come with you. The unfortunate piece is your spouses can't work right away. There is an exception, but that's if you are being sponsored for a green card in parallel to your H. So it's unfortunate because most high-skilled workers are married to other high-skilled workers. So I have found over the years that you have an unhappy spouse, but what I have found is that these spouses end up studying. They end up getting an F1, or they just study and they build their own network and they try to get their own H-1B. There is a limit to the amount of time you can spend. It's 6 years. You can extend if you've been sponsored for a green card. And so the key is just to be thinking, because time goes so fast, is, maybe around year 2, year 3 to start talking with your employer, hey, will you sponsor me? Or very early on in the interview process, just ask, do you sponsor permanent residents? Do you, or just do some due diligence and find out, okay? All right, just some current restrictions on the H-1B. On June 22nd, the administration, the president issued a proclamation, and he said no new H-1B workers or their dependents can come from abroad until December 31st. So if you were registered in the lottery this year, and if you were selected, and if you were approved, unfortunately, you can't pick up a visa right now because the consulates are closed. You would have to get an emergency appointment, but they're not going to let you in till December 31st. So this is, this is a challenge. National interest is really work around COVID, physicians, researchers that working in COVID, or anyone working in supply chain management issues. But if you are abroad and you have an H-1B visa valid, that was valid before June 24th, 2020, let's say you worked for another employer, you were let go maybe, or you quit and you went back to your home country, but you still have this valid visa. If you find another employer who can get you approved for the H, you can travel on that visa with your new approval notice, okay? The good news is that this proclamation is being challenged in court, and it's being challenged by some really big companies. They feel that this is completely not fair because they'd sponsored these H-1B workers and were planning for them to come and work starting in October. So it is being challenged. So once again, we are dealing with a situation that's changing very fast, and we'll find out how the proclamation litigation goes. All right, let's talk about the next visa, which is the L1 visa for intra-company transferees. So this is a fantastic visa. This is actually a visa designed to support and promote international trade. And so if you have a company in your home country, or and you want to launch a company in the United States, or you are working for a company that has an office in the United States, this could be the right visa for you. So let me break it down for you because there's subcategories. If you are coming to open a new office in the US that is legally related to an entity where you are working. So let's say you are in Uzbekistan and you are running a business, and I actually work with a lot of clients who do this. They have a software services firm or a technology services firm, and they're based in Uzbekistan, and they've grown, they're doing really well, and they want to tackle that US market. So you want to open a legally related entity in the US. You're able to come over here to open a new office, so long as you are working as a manager or an executive or as a worker with specialized knowledge. And you have to show that you have been working with the company outside the US for at least 1 year. And that means physically, not you're here in the US as a visitor, but on payroll in Uzbekistan. It means you're physically there. And they do verify that through your travel history. They'll ask for a letter from your HR manager. They'll want to see your ties to your home country. So because a lot of my clients will say, well, what about if I was in the US for 6 months of that time as a visitor, or 4 months? No, that's not going to work. The other little development in case law, or just practice, and how the government is approving these cases, is that if you are applying as a worker of specialized knowledge, 1 year of employment with the company is generally not considered enough to show specialized knowledge. Okay, so I'll give you a perfect example of some of my specialized knowledge workers. They could be a researcher. I had a client, they build certain kinds of sunglasses in Japan, and then they were extending out to the US, and they sent one of their key designers of these glasses to the US to make sure that the team in the US was building them according to the company proprietary methods. So that was a worker of specialized knowledge. Okay, so those are the ways that you can do that. Some just nuts and bolts in terms of government filing fees, and I bring these up because they're not insignificant, and it's important as you plan to grow into the US to budget for all this, right? So it's about $1,000 to apply for an L, and then if you want a decision fast, it's an extra $1,440. So, those are important numbers, and you probably need a lawyer to help you prepare that petition. And then insofar as how much time you get, if you are a specialized knowledge worker, you get 5 years. And if you are a manager or executive, you get 7 years. And there's actually a very nice path to permanent resident as an international manager or executive. It's not available to specialized knowledge workers, but it is available to executives or managers. It's actually one of the top priority employment green card categories. So a lot of my clients will spend, let's say, 4 or 5 years in the US as a manager, and then they will get permanent residence. Not all companies are supportive of that because they want you to rotate out to another country, maybe like the large companies, like IBM or GE. They want you, or Shell, these oil companies, they want you rotating out. So they might not be supportive of an L1, of an international manager green card. But the great news is that your spouse can work. So she or he would get an unrestricted work authorization document. It's not tied to anyone. They could work part-time at Whole Foods. They could work part-time as fitness instructor, whatever they want. It's unrestricted. But it's nice. It gives them work authorization. Okay, so just like the same proclamation I mentioned that President Trump issued on June 22nd applies for new L1 workers and their dependents. So again, if your work is in the national interest, you could qualify for an exemption. So again, we're facing the same, couple of challenges. Is the consulate open? Are you coming from a restricted country? And is your work in the national interest? I mean, these are the hurdles we're facing right now. Again, there is a sunset date, December 31st. We are hoping, I'll be very honest. I'm hoping that we have a different president coming in November. And so this all could be behind us. I have to tell you one story. I am part of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. This is 15,000 immigration lawyers across America. And for the first time in its history, it's been around for over 75 years. And for the first time in its history, it has taken a position on the elections and said, we do not support this president. Because technically we're supposed to be non-political and we're not supposed to take sides. But this is the first time where we felt we've had 4 years of just such restrictive and counterproductive measures. And it's been very, challenging. But I will tell you, at the same time, You know, I worked at the world's largest immigration law firm for 8 years. I worked in the federal courts for 5 years dealing with removal orders. I started my own practice 6 years ago. And I have to tell you that we just continue to grow every year. We are, you know, the system is working, even though it's restricted. Companies are launching, people are getting their visas, they're getting their green cards, companies are growing. And so there's plenty of opportunity here. Still, and the system does still work. So, okay, so let's talk about J1 for visa for trainees and interns. This is actually a fabulous alternative to being a student, an F1, because now studying in America is just so expensive. So what a lot of people, sorry, that's for my Stanford presentation, sorry. What a lot of people are doing is they're coming into work as a trainee or an intern, and they're getting that exposure, and they're getting a taste of America, and they're building that network. You know, so what is the J1? The J1 that I'm going to talk about for you guys, there's a lot of things that fall under the J1: au pairs, research scholars, professors. All of this is the J1. But the J1s I'm going to talk about for you guys is the one for trainees and interns, where you can go and work at a startup. And the internship, the maximum time you could get is 12 months. You must be enrolled in a university abroad or have graduated from a university abroad no more than 12 months before starting. So essentially you have to be like a really junior professional. And then a traineeship is 18 months. And you have to have graduated, and you have to have, you know, at least 1 year of experience. Daniel, can I just, so I'm sorry, you guys, I actually am speaking at Stanford right after this at 10 o'clock, and they are calling me. Sorry, let me just.
Yeah, go ahead, no problem.
Let me just tell her, she's panicked.
No worry, don't worry. In the meantime, guys, please ask your questions in Q&A section. There are some people who already put their questions in there. And if you want to ask your questions, just raise your hand and we'll let you speak. And also, I put in the chat how to connect to Go Global World community, how to become a member and enjoy these professional speakers from Silicon Valley and beyond, such as Nadia. Yeah, and if you want to contribute more than just a participant, and feel free to do so. We can.
Okay, thank you. That was very nicely done. Very smooth, Daniel. Okay, so this is the J1. Again, you know, I've met many people on the J1. A lot of companies have J1 programs like GE, Hewlett Packard, Apple, you know, a lot of the big companies. A lot of small companies can sponsor you on the J1 as well. It's just a much less expensive alternative to the student path. And it just gives you that, you know, taste of America that you can either use here or go back. Now, the one thing I do want to tell you is that depending on the country you come from, you may have a 2-year home residency requirement. So before you know, when you are looking into this, it's by country and it's by a particular skill. So you could be from a country that has a skills list, but you may not be working in a skill that they want you to come back and apply. From a larger global policy perspective, the reason for this is to avoid brain drain, because otherwise everyone, let's be honest, will want to come over to a Western state, to America or to, you know, Canada or Australia, and they take their training in, let's just say, Ghana, and then they want to come to America and apply that training. And, you know, for Ghana, that's not fair. So to avoid the brain drain, they say, well, at least come back for 2 years and work here. So just be careful when you're looking at that, because some people get very surprised when they find out that they have to do this. They don't know. And then they find out that, oh, it's always been there in the little writing on their visa. Okay. So unfortunately, this restriction that I talked about will, the presidential proclamation, this applies also to J1 workers. So the presidential proclamation that was issued on June 22nd deals with H-1B, L, and J workers. Same rules, unless, it's valid until December 31, 2020. If your work is in the national interest, you're exempted. We're dealing with closed consulates, the visa validity issue, but this too is part of the legal challenge. That is, it's literally right now being fought in court. Okay. All right. So let's talk about this visa. Now, this visa is a great one for traders. And when I say trade, it's not like stock market traders. It's trade as in of goods. And then investors. And this is a really wonderful visa. I love working on these. But you must be, the one issue is you must be a national of a treaty country. So this link here, which I've underlined, it'll take you to the State Department's website, which lists every country that has a treaty with the United States. And I also, I have, I have a little chart I'll show you. And what the e-visa is, one, it's for trade. So let's say it's for goods. And I'm from Pakistan originally, and we actually have a lot of Pakistani countries because Pakistan has a treaty with the US. There's a lot of trade in textiles, towels, rugs, so that trade, people have the E1 to oversee that trade of goods. But the more common one is the E2 for investment. And that's basically, you're putting your dollars into you're putting your money into the United States to create or build or oversee a real and operating enterprise. So there's a few elements in that I want to emphasize. One, people say, well, I'll just buy a couple of properties. Is that an investment that I can use to get an E2? No, because that's not an operating enterprise. And when I say that, what the government wants to see is that you're generating jobs. It's not like the investment green card where you have to generate 10 jobs and put in $1.8 million. That is a different program. This is for nationals of treaty countries, and I'm going to show you here. So I thought that, because Daniel had mentioned that a lot of the members were in the Eastern European, former Soviet Union states, I sort of identified the former Soviet Union states and showed you which ones have a treaty with the US and which ones do not. So you can see Armenia and Azerbaijan, Ukraine does, but Belarus, Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, these ones don't. So again, you can see it's kind of, okay, so it's very important to check the list of countries to see if there is a treaty, okay? And the other thing, when people say, okay, well, how much do I need to invest? What's the amount? The amount really, there's nothing set in law. There's nothing, base amount. It's really what makes sense for the business. Okay, so I'll tell you, I worked at a law firm that focused a lot on Japanese clients. So, they would want to open sushi bars or sake bars or a sake shop. And so they would invest maybe 80, 100,000 in buying the shop, or buying the business, hiring people, the website. I also know people who finished, or I actually helped them. They were my clients where they finished their studies here, let's say in law. I had one client, she was from Korea. She finished her law degree. She couldn't find a job after her OPT ended. And so she's decided to start her own law firm because we have a treaty with Korea. And she, pulled together all this family money, and we put in about 90,000. She, rented a little office space, hired a legal assistant, got a website, talked about a business plan, and we got her an E2, okay? So usually you can do it at the consulate, or you can apply in the US if you are here. The great thing about the E is there's no actual limit. You are given E2 status in 2-year increments, but there's no limit. So, the biggest users of the E program are the Germans, the Japanese, the British. They are big users of the E program. They have a lot of businesses that they invest in the US. But I also just helped a client from Italy buy a gelato shop in San Diego, and it was like $60,000. So, and then the great thing about the E is that your spouse gets to work. So that's a bonus about the E. Okay. Let's talk about my favorite visa. I love all these visas. I feel like I have family members on every single one of these, from my dad, my uncle, my cousins who are here on J1s as physicians, and they are subject to the 2-year home residency requirement. I've got relatives who have an E for towel, for importing, exporting towels. I have one cousin who has an E for rice because they have a rice mill in Pakistan. And then this one is the O1. Visa for individuals of extraordinary ability. I love this visa. When I first started working at Fragment, which is the world's largest immigration law firm, we did movie stars, we did Paul McCartney, but we also do people who are just trailblazers in their field. So you want to be someone who has established yourself either nationally or internationally in the sciences, the arts, education, business, athletics. There's a separate one for those in the arts. It has the criteria is a little different. I'm not going to go over that one in this presentation, but just to alert you that if you're in the arts, you can text me or you can message me, and then I can send you the link to the criteria for those in the arts. You have to be coming to the US to work in your area of expertise. So if you are a renowned ping pong player, you can't come to the US to work at Facebook. You have to be coming to work in ping pong. And it is tied to your employer or your agent. So if you're a writer, you could have an O1 with an agent. If you're a model, I did the actress Judi Dench, it was her agent sponsoring her. Much to the jealousy of my male coworker in my office next to me, I got to do a Victoria's Secrets models O1. So he's like, why didn't I get that case? But so the duration is, they're good for 3 years at first, and then renewable every year. In 1 year increments. Some people do not want a green card. They are very, very, very high net worth, and they do not want to pay taxes in the US. So they like to not get a green card and stay on the O1. But if you want permanent residence, there's also a green card for a person of extraordinary ability. And then there's the O for dependents. There's no work authorization. Okay, let me quickly go over the criteria. And then Daniel, how much time do we have left? Because we're just to get a sense.
Continue as much as you need, but I know that you have to go in 15 minutes. So we're hoping to have a few questions later. But
yeah, definitely, we're good. I just wanted to. We're going to fly through the rest of the slides. So here's the criteria. You want to show 3 of these 8. Okay, so at least 3. What I find is with my younger clients, they've got 2, but they have to work towards the 3rd. So the criteria are national or international awards in your field, published material about you. They used to be more generous, and it could be about your work, but your name's got to be in there. Scholarly articles. The first place USCIS, which is the Immigration and Services Department of Homeland Security, the first place they go to is Google Scholar. They check your articles. They check how many people have cited to you. Okay. Being asked to judge the work of others in your field. A perfect example is, you have a PhD and you're invited to see a dissertation defense, or journal articles. You're reviewing journal articles. Membership in associations that require outstanding achievements. It's like by invitation only. Important and original contributions to your field. So not just to your company, but to your field. And that's usually in the form of patents or papers also, or just some kind of trademark. Then there's high salary. And that goes back to that Department of Labor wage library I told you. So there are 4 levels there. If you're way above level 4, we include that. And then employment in a critical role for established organizations. So those are the 8 criteria. You need to show 3 in order to qualify. We always try to put in every single one possible, even if it's just, one association you're a member of, but we try to do as many as possible. And what I say to my clients who are, leaning towards this, they're interested in doing this, I just say, start thinking about opportunities for yourself. Start writing those articles, start applying for awards, start getting involved in judging the work of a startup pitch or something. So that's the O. I'm going to fly through these because these are for specific nationals, Daniel. This is an E3 for Australians. So if there's any Australians in the audience, this is essentially like an H1B, but it's for Australian nationals, okay? And all the same requirements, all the same limitations. There are no restrictions for Australians to travel into the US, like the H's and the L's and the J's right now, but the consulates in Australia are closed. The good news is your spouse could work, okay? And then the other nationality-specific visa is the TN for Canadian and Mexicans. And so if you are either from Canada or Mexico and you are coming to work in a specific occupation, so there's a list of occupations, so it's not like the H-1B where you just have to show it's highly skilled. It's actually a very narrow list of occupations. And then the good news is there's no wage requirement, but you cannot found a company and then come over on a TN if you're Mexican or Canadian. Okay, so you really can't be a controlling shareholder. And this one is also indefinite, but you get to come in 3-year increments. Unfortunately, your spouse does not get to work. Okay, like I said, I would show you a really quick slide on the avenues for permanent residence. If this is something you're interested in, you should definitely reach out to me. We can set up a consultation. We can talk about the various ways in which you could get a green card. The first is employment. And under employment, there are 5 sort of subcategories. It could be international worker, it could be, international manager, individual of extraordinary ability, professional, someone in the national interest. I mean, there's all these subcategories under the employment-based green card path. And then there's family-based, and there's a lot of subcategories there too. You could be a spouse of a U.S. citizen, you could be a parent of a U.S. citizen child, you could be the spouse of a green card holder. There's a lot of subcategories there too. And then there's the annual green card lottery that you may know about. Doesn't cost anything. 15 million people usually register for 50,000 green cards. Then there's asylum. And that is, if you're afraid to go back to your home country, and we do work with a lot of clients who come to the US and they discover a religion or their sexual orientation, or they're just really afraid to go home. And so there's asylum. That's a way to get a green card. And then the last is investment based. And that's if you invest $1.8 million and generate 10 jobs, or 900 million in there's politically correct term, but just for like poorer areas, if you invest 900,000 and generate 10 jobs. Okay, and then once you've got permanent residence, after 5 years, you can apply for citizenship. Now, here's the problem. We are currently facing restrictions here as well. Since April 22nd, green cards for people who are sitting outside the US are not being processed until December 31st. So, and it's unless you are the spouse of a US citizen. But again, we're also dealing with closed consulates. So in this regard, if you are a parent of a US citizen, or you're the adult children of a US citizen, your spouses and children of green card holders, if you were selected in the green card lottery, all employment-based green cards, except for the investor one, all of these are just on hold. Nobody's being allowed in right now since April 22nd to December 31st. Okay. So that's the current restrictions on processing of green cards. Let me also just talk about some common obstacles beyond COVID and beyond Trump that often prevent people from getting their green cards or their visas. One is, as I had mentioned, about the J1, that people have a 2-year home residency requirement that they did not know about. So it's very important when you explore that option that you make sure, are you subject to it? Because if you are, then after your J, you have to finish it before you get another visa. If you've overstayed by more than 180 days, you're not allowed back into the US for 3 years. And if you've been in this country without authorization for a year or more, it's 10 years. So you want to be careful about overstaying. And then the other thing is just a bad memory. If you have committed a crime in the US and you've forgotten and you mark, oh, I've never committed a crime, I've never been arrested. Well, when you do your biometrics for the visa, your fingerprints could show things, and then the government would say, well, you lied. So we want to be careful. And if you've been arrested or convicted anywhere in the world, you want to talk to an immigration lawyer about how to handle that, how to explain that to the government, how to make sure that it's not a reason that you could be denied. And for example, any controlled substance conviction or arrest means you're not going to be allowed in. So you want to talk to an immigration lawyer about how that could affect you, or if you're in the middle of a charge, you want to make sure that things get dropped, or that you want to be very careful about arrests and convictions. I mean, these things happen. People get in fights. People make bad judgment calls. They drink and drive. All of these things happen. So you just want to make sure you're talking to someone who can help you figure out the consequences and how to minimize those consequences. Okay. So this is probably my last slide, really. I just want to talk about the COVID-19 related travel restrictions. So there are 31 countries from which travel is restricted. So if you've been in one of these 31 countries in the last 14 days, you're not allowed in. So China, Iran, the European Schengen area. So, so Switzerland, for example, sometimes I forget, is part of Schengen. It's not part of the EU. The UK, which is Scotland, Northern Ireland. For some reason, Ireland doesn't fall into this. Here it is, sorry, Republic of Ireland, and then Brazil. So these are the countries from which, if you're traveling, you're not going to be allowed into the US. And as I had mentioned before, people were quarantining in Canada and then trying to come in after 14 days, and that has been put on hold because Canada is not accepting people from these countries until the end of July. So just a little bit about me. I started a podcast series because I love talking about immigration. So I have 12 episodes, and if you want, if you're someone who likes to listen things as opposed to reading, my podcasts are pretty short. I have interviews with a former immigration judge. She had been a judge for 30 years. I have an interview with an asylum officer. I have an interview with a criminal defense lawyer. Those are some parts of law. And then I have very short podcasts on each of the visa categories that you may want to hear more about. And then I also have a podcast interview by a recruiter for tech companies for the last 30 years. She's in Silicon Valley. She's been recruiting for 30 years, and she has an interview. I interview her on how can job applicants deal with visa sponsorship issues. So you might find that's one of my most popular podcasts, by the way. And so here's my contact details. Here's my team. You could hear from any one of us if you contact us, and that's it. So we have a few minutes for questions. I'm sorry. I probably just need to jump off in 8-9 minutes.
How much time do we have?
I'll probably jump off like at 9:58. So 10 minutes.
Awesome. Then the first question we have about the consulates. Laura Korobkova is asking, thank you, thank you for your presentation. Is it possible to figure out in which countries consulates are issuing visas for students? And I guess it's a question from everyone, like what consulates are open and where, if you know.
That's a great question. So the consulates across the world are not open yet unless all consulates are open for emergency appointments. They are slowly reopening based on location. So it's really for you, I mean, the one thing is it's not easy to apply in a consulate where you don't reside, right? So what country are you from?
I guess Russia, Armenia, CIS countries. The main questions coming from this region.
Yeah. So you'd have to check the specific consulates where you want to apply. Unfortunately, the State Department that's what they're telling us. You have to just check that the consulate where you want to apply. We have as immigration lawyers, we've come up with a spreadsheet, but it's I mean, we're trying to keep track, but the consulates are just opening, and what we are finding is sometimes they open and then they close again. So, yeah.
And do you know, like, do you have any estimates when they possibly can open? Any rumor?
Yeah, I wish I knew that. Unfortunately, they are saying they're going location by location. So a U.S. consulate in South Africa, and let's say a U.S. consulate in Brazil, they're going to be open. Like Brazil, they're going to be opening at a different time than maybe New Zealand, right? So unfortunately, it's just going to come down to you checking the consulates where it's realistic for you to travel and apply, and also seeing if they'll accept your application as a third country national. Generally, the rule is you have to apply in the country where you live or where you have your passport from.
Right. The other question is what's your recommendations for entering the country through the customs, like how to prevent issues? Lately, many people heard of people returning back to their home countries when they trying to cross the border, and they are all legal, like students or H-1Bs, and or even on some other visas like tourist visas. And what would be the right things to do and not to do when you enter in the country?
Yeah, so it depends on the visa category you're entering in. It also depends on where you're coming from. So it could be that a lot of these people who are being returned have traveled, even if it's transiting, right? They've traveled through a country where it's restricted. So one of those 31 countries. So that could be part of the issue. We are not hearing of an uptick in expedited removal or we are not hearing of people being turned away at the border and returned. So I'm not sure what the news source is for that. But I think probably what I would make sure is, one, you're coming from a country that's not restricted. Two, depending on your visa category, you want to make sure you persuade the officer that you are coming to do what your visa category is for. So if you're saying you're coming in as a tourist, then you have to show, well, I'm going to be going to Disney World, or I'm going to see family, and I have a return ticket to go home. Here's my return ticket. So I think it really depends on why you're seeking to enter and where you're coming from.
And let's do the last question, because people have many questions. I suggest after our call, I will send you the link to our global chat, and you can post your presentation in there, your contacts, and people may ask you questions, and you continue interacting with our global audience if you want to.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be like easier for everyone, and especially for you, since you need to join the other one. The last question about payroll. Those who on H-1B visas, they're asking, can payrolls should payroll starts when they enter the United States? And what about the time they're working for a company before they entering the States? Can they work as a consultant or something like well, still when they still didn't enter the country yet?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So if you're not working physically in the United States, U.S. immigration laws are that they don't care, right? You could work for you could work for a company from abroad, Mongolia, Russia, anywhere. Um, so if you're doing that, then the issue is more for the company's payroll and all the taxes they have to if you're on their payroll, they're paying all these taxes and you're paying all these taxes to US into US funds that maybe you shouldn't do because you're not physically in the US, right? So generally what my clients do for for these situations is that they have that person working as an independent contractor and just paying you as a contractor while you're overseas. And then you're right that once you come in on your H and you start working, you are put on payroll as soon as you come in. That's the best way to do it.
And when they enter, I mean, they ask like how soon they should be put on the payroll, as of the first day, or there is some like a room, like a couple of days or the first months of their.
Yeah, they should just be put on payroll once they start working.
Okay.
I mean, there's nothing in the law that says you can wait, you have a 5-day grace period. I mean, if you are working for a company, you should be put on payroll right away.
Awesome. And that was Nadia Yakoob, a good friend of mine from Silicon Valley, highly professional immigration lawyer, and very well connected with people from across United States and across Silicon Valley, especially with all startup community and Stanford community. I know that. Thank you so much for your time. We really enjoyed this conversation. It was very detailed, and we would be happy to continue with you on our network. I will send you the right global link for Facebook global chat where you can interact with our global entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and I would really encourage everyone to connect with me on LinkedIn, or because that's really a great place. I post a lot of content on LinkedIn. In fact, Daniel, I posted about our presentation today. I must have gotten over like 1,500 views. So it's
Amazing.
clearly something. Yeah, people are really interested in these topics, and obviously your community. So if people want to stay in touch, I would love it if they could send me a LinkedIn invite.
Absolutely, and we will be definitely referring people to you. And I mean, just be active on our community as well. And I'm sure there will be lots of people coming to you with questions, and hopefully there will be more successful entrepreneurs living happily in the United States with the right immigration assistance.
Thank you so much, you guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Enjoy, and say hi to Stanford, to mention the Go Global World there. And
I will.
thank you so much. Guys.
All right, Daniel, take care.
Take care. Guys, please
Bye.
stay. Goodbye. Guys, please stay. I have a few words to mention, and you can ask us questions and ask me questions if you have any. I want to say that in next week we will have another great speaker. I just want to repeat this again if you want to join in the beginning. Just 1 second. I'm sharing the screen. Next week we will have a bank plan from Silicon Valley talking about pivot, don't pause, how to grow a company during the crisis. He's a great speaker, and he's an expert in marketing and in knowing how to build business. I highly recommend you to join on our Facebook page. You can go to Go Global World /events, and you'll find an event with him. Darya White, for those who speak Russian, Darya White will give some legal insights on successful negotiations with corporations. And Konstantin Uvartsev also will have a webinar in Russian, how to run business from Siberia in 18 countries. He's a successful entrepreneur. He'll share his insights and his entrepreneurial path with you, so you can probably repeat some of it. This Friday, we will have a networking event helping entrepreneurs. Will be helping other entrepreneurs from across different countries in Russian. I highly recommend you to join. This is a very good event to build your international network. And those who speak Russian, join us. Those who speak English, and everyone actually from today's webinar is invited to our Go Global World monthly founders meetup, where entrepreneurs from around the world in English will be able to connect and exchange basically problems they're trying to solve, and share how they can help you, how basically you can help each other. So very important to be here. It's every first Friday of the month, so next Friday. This is the link how to get access to our Eventbrite page. And I need to mention our partners, IT Park in Uzbekistan. We also started partnering with Astana Hub in Kazakhstan, Technopark Skolkovo, Moscow School of Management Skolkovo, GSD Venture Studios. In the United States, we have Aeronautical University, IB Consultor, and in Russia, we have Rusbase, our partner. And we have also more partners. We'll be announcing them soon. On Facebook, you can find us Go Global World. You can also scan this QR code. Find the group of your country, so you can also locally connect it to our local leaders and your local community. Also, we have a global chat where we can speak. You can speak with entrepreneurs from all over the world, and you just find Go Global World chat or scan this QR code. We also on Telegram, Go Global World. We are on LinkedIn, same thing. And this video will be posted on YouTube very soon. Please like it, subscribe, share it. We don't have any budget for marketing, and it's very important we can distribute this content to more entrepreneurs around the world so they can benefit and use this free knowledge for them to grow their businesses globally. That's it on my end. If you have any questions to me, you either can email me, or I can answer some of the questions right now. I don't see any questions. Therefore, thank you so much for your time, guys. I really appreciate you joining our events during summer season. That means this content is important for you. We continue doing this. Remember, we are English-speaking community helping entrepreneurs to go global. On this note, we are done, and everyone have a great rest of the summer. I'll see you next week, and have a nice day. Goodbye.